Okay, my name's Neil Robertson. I work for Arup in Manchester. I'm part of the structures building engineering team. I'm going to give you a bit of a brief overview in the or what's new in Revit for 2018. So the main things for from the structural point of view is it's not what you would class as anything new. It's mainly enhancements on things that were already there to make a lot of it better and more useful for us moving forward. The two main areas are the steel connections and the links with advanced steel, and then the reinforcement rebar detailing within Revit. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the steel connections. They've been around in Revit for a few years now. They've never actually really been brilliant, but they've kind of had the little bits of use occasionally. They've added a lot more now into the catalogue. You can use them in all locations. You can have now custom sections. Where do I see them being used? Hopefully, from a consultant point of view, not everywhere, because what I'd hate to see is one of our models absolutely littered with connection details. But in certain areas where you're trying to portray something to an architect or another engineer or a client, or even the fabricator who's going to produce the model, it'd be good if you could just model up a quick connection so that they know that, you know, the architect can turn around and see something that's on show and say, actually, I don't like that, it's too clunky, it's too... Likewise, you can do something quite tidy and neat so that the fabricator knows that the architect doesn't want two great big bits of plates with bolts and the like. So I think that there is uses for this, but not necessarily splashed across a whole model from a consultant side. It's about, and I think Laura touched on it before, it's about modelling the right things at the right time as well. Not just because you can do it, don't just think, yeah, great, I can put splice connections all over my model, because that's not going to help anyone out. You can do connections. One of the things here is that it seems that you can have more control when you're putting the connections in as to which is the primary. So on this one, this is the primary beam, and then these these two are the secondary. So that'll always go further. I'm hoping that even without using that there has been an advancement into the general Revit beam, so that you can control it a little bit more. That control's in there, but it always seems a little bit hit and miss. But we'll wait and see for that. The links now with advanced steel seem to be a little bit more fluid. I'm not an advanced steel user, I have to be honest. It's not something I've ever used, but I do know there are people out there that do use it and do work with it. So the fact that if you've got someone using advanced steel, you can send them a Revit model, they can work with it, then fantastic. It saves them remodelling things. Second thing that's really been enhanced over the last couple of years is the rebar detailing in Revit for 3D rebar. I'm a big fan of 3D rebar detailing. It's been in Tekla for a number of years. The reason behind it is that it allows people to see exactly, very early stages, the amount of rebar. You've all been there from a structural point of view, teaching an apprentice or a young graduate how to detail rebar and stuff, and you've got your 2D line works, and they look at you with that blank face that 15 years ago you had, because you haven't got a clue what they're trying to portray. This is brilliant. You see straight away exactly what it is. There's a lot of detail now in that you can now do a lot of more complex shapes. Up until, you know, in the last couple of years, these complex shapes have come in. It's become a lot more usable as well. And within Arup, we are using 3D rebar on a couple of projects, and we are getting some very good results with it. There is a learning curve to it. Some of this now will enable us to take that a little bit further. You know, using these shapes. I'm not saying that we model things like this at the moment or anything like that, but it's more to say this is more where I see the benefits. You can easily portray that across to someone, especially when you're teaching an apprentice or someone young, as I said before. They can see straight away, and you can easily explain to them where your starter bars are for your columns, your cages. Also, you can hand that over to the graduate engineers, the younger engineers, and people are straight away seeing things. You've got colours in there. You can colour the bars up by, you know, these are all 20s, these are all 16s. you're able to do quite a lot with it. It's really, really useful. There's now an ability to import files from different programs, SAP files, and use those as a background to detail against, which is something that wasn't there. Now that's another thing that's great, because it means you can bring models in from other pieces of software that before you couldn't. So if you've got civils teams using it, you can really work with those. I've got a couple of the Revit platform tools as well to show you, and I know Joachim did talk about the coordination model. I'm not probably going to go over what he said, but for me this is a really useful thing from a structural point of view. For a number of years we've been asking to enable Civil 3D and Revit to be able to have that same model in one file, and this seems to be Autodesk's answer. The fact that we can now export a Navis file out of Civil 3D, we can reference that file into our Revit model, means that we can now have that Civil 3D file there and then, and we can coordinate with it from the building services point of view, from the below ground drainage, and also from the structural point of view as if we're modifying foundations or external structural concrete works. So I think that's really useful for us. The georeferencing, again, I've left this in. I don't know a huge amount about this. I think it's been there for a while, so I think whatever they've done is a slight enhancement. Anything that makes the dark art of coordinate systems in Revit a little bit easier has to be a good thing, because the one thing I've learned over the years is that you really have to spend some time sorting out your coordinates at the start of your projects. Otherwise, if you get halfway through and you're trying to fix them, then it can be an absolute nightmare. So anything that is good for this, for making sure that you can be wholly accurate on your coordination, your coordinates, is brilliant. And then moving on, I think this is the final thing. It's the ability now to have more links with Rhino. From a structural point of view, we use Rhino a lot for early stage schemes and things like that. What you can't do is produce drawings very well from Rhino. The fact that we could be in a position where we can just take Rhino files, put them into Revit at your early stage 2 points, and actually get a few drawings out that you can include as part of a scheme, it really helps, because you don't have to have 2 models going in alongside. You can have one model, you import it, you produce your set of drawings that you need, and then when you start your later stages, you can start to really get into the nitty-gritty of producing that model. So the fact that you can do that, and it might not be for the whole model, it just might be for certain areas that are quite complex. You could have a lot of it modelled, and you might just have a complex roof or some complex structure around. You can have that linked in, and then that's it.